Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by MillerFootball, and I have been doing a series throughout the summer where I am going division by division, team by team, and pick by pick to hand out my grades for the 2023 NFL Draft, and today we are here to conclude that series with the AFC South. Now, before I jump into this, a couple things to address. Number one, I don't have a face cam for this video, unfortunately. There's something going on with OBS. I got to troubleshoot it and get all that figured out. But because I have deadlines set for myself and I have other videos I need to get out, I unfortunately cannot sit and wait until I get that figured out. I have to get this done now. I got to make sure I get it out. So, unfortunately, if you're here to look at my face and my face cam, I'm sorry. There's plenty of other videos on my channel for you that'll have that. But if you're here for the draft analysis, if you're a Colts fan, a Jaguars fan, a Titans fan, or a Texans fan, I still got you. We're still going to be talking about your teams. I'll make sure to include as many highlights as I can to switch up and whatnot. And also, before we dive into this, as I always say, I am not an NFL GM. I'm not an NFL scout. I'm not an NFL expert. I'm just a 20-year-old college kid with way too much free time on my hands that decided to spend a lot of that this spring watching college tape, instead of having a social life or doing homework or whatever, that's what I was doing. And I gotta say, I don't regret it one bit. It's been a ton of fun getting to talk about the draft all summer, and I'm really excited to see what a lot of these guys are going to do in the NFL. And obviously, if I say somebody like Evan Hall is complete dog water and is never going to amount to anything in their life, which I would never say, that's very rude. But if I did, say something very negative about a prospect, and 3 years down the line, they're three-time MVP, won 6 Super Bowls in 3 years somehow, broke every single record at every single position, and became ultimate king of the universe, then you know what? By all means, come back, take your victory lap, make fun of me, point and laugh. I will happily own up to it. I will happily, eat my words, all that good stuff. I have no shame in being wrong, because that's the beauty of NFL draft analysis, is you're going to be right sometimes, you're going to be wrong sometimes, but even when you're wrong, a lot of the guys end up being really fun, so it doesn't matter in the end. But before we dive into this, make sure to leave a like down below. It helps out a ton, shows me you care, really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about the Indianapolis Colts. Alright, so like I said, starting things off with the Indianapolis Colts, I love this draft class. There's a lot of players I'm a big fan of, and we'll get into them, but I think one of the best parts about this draft class is just how fun it is as a whole. Like, it's very clear that Jim Irsay and the Colts and Chris Ballard really emphasized athleticism this year. It was really apparent that, they essentially Googled RAS scores and just drafted the best guy they could at every position, and that becomes incredibly apparent when you see their first pick, and their pick in the 4th round, and, some of their other defensive picks, and like I said, we'll get into all them. But starting out with the first player I actually watched for this draft cycle, it's kind of fitting that he's in the last episode here, and that's quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida. One of, if not the most fun prospect in this entire class. I'm not the first person to say this. I certainly won't be the last. I want to say it was Bengal was the first person to say something like this. I know an NFL player said it recently as well. But this guy is essentially what would happen if your created player from Madden became a real person, right? If he came to life, if we were in Pixels or something. Shout out Adam Sandler. That's a very underrated movie. But, if that video game character were to come to life, it would be Anthony Richardson, because he's got this insane athletic ability. He's got Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson speed in Cam Newton's body. He's big, he's physical, he's fast, he's agile, he's a smart runner. He's not afraid to hit people, which, kind of iffy with a quarterback. We saw what happened to Cam Newton. We see what's... people talk about it all the time with Josh Allen. I'm not going to say it's happening to him, but people talk about it a lot with him. And on top of that, he's got this rocket arm that, coming into the league day one is like borderline elite by NFL standards. I don't think it would be crazy to say Anthony Richardson already has a top 10 arm in the NFL, if not even top 5. His arm strength is absolutely absurd. And like I said, you pair that with this athletic ability, and he's like a video game character, And on top of that, he's a really good red zone passer. His pre-snap processor is pretty damn good. He reads leverage well, like the leverage receivers have on corners and things of that nature. He's pretty smart with the football. He attacks the middle of the field well. But much like people playing Madden with a guy with a ton of athleticism and a big arm, he's not the best decision maker. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He could definitely improve there. He just needs a lot of work on the mental side of the game. Now, I think he needs less work than a lot of people would have you believe. Like, there's a lot of people out there who think Anthony Richardson is just a straight athlete with no polish whatsoever, and I don't think that. I do think there's something there, at least to build off of, but there is going to need to be work done. But on the bright side, he gets to go work with Shane Steichen now, who, as we all know, made Jalen Hurts a great quarterback, or at least helped make Jalen Hurts a great quarterback. I'm not going to pretend like that was all coaching. Shout out Jalen Hurts. He worked his ass off to get where he's at. But Anthony Richardson now gets to work with him, who did a lot of things with Jalen Hurts that can absolutely be applied to Anthony Richardson. Using the run game extensively to take a lot of the pressure off of him, making him a weapon in the run game. Jalen Hurts this year, especially with A.J. Brown, was somebody that was really good throwing the ball downfield and picking up big chunk plays through the air. And Anthony Richardson, with his cannon of an arm, that's something you can absolutely do with him. So I think the fit is perfect. I love this for Anthony Richardson. I know the first preseason game, he wasn't good, blah, blah, blah. It's preseason. I don't give a rat's ass how he looked in preseason, okay? So I'm not worried about that. I like Richardson as a prospect a lot. And this is one of those instances where if I hadn't already set the precedent that A-pluses were reserved for, stealing somebody, which we'll get to one of those in this draft, this would be an A+. But unfortunately, Anthony Richardson at 4 is not quite a steal, so I'm just going to give it an A, but just know this is the highest A I can possibly give out. And then we move into the second round. What would that be? 40 picks later. God, that was easy mental math. I don't know why I stuttered there. And they selected cornerback Julius Brents out of Kansas State, who for me was CB7, had a round 2 grade on him. He's somebody that has really good stopping and start ability, his ability to kind of stop real quick and then pick back up. He's really sticky in man coverage. It's hard to shake him off. He's got good reaction time, good ball skills, really fluid hips. He's physical. He's a good tackler. He's a good run defender, which I love. I know that's not a necessity for a corner, but I love a corner that's willing to get down and dirty and make a play in the run game. It's not a huge deal, but I love it. And he's a fantastic scheme fit. He's somebody that, in my opinion and a lot of other people's opinions, was really going to be at his best if he get to go play a lot of cover 3. He's playing with Gus Bradley, and that is Gus Bradley's bread and butter is that cover 3. So I like the fit a lot there. On the negative side, though, he's not the fastest guy in the world in terms of foot speed. Not great in zone coverage. He really struggles to keep his feet moving. His punches don't really land. He's kind of grabby. But as a whole, he's somebody that I think could play very well as a press jam corner, just somebody you're going to play up on the line of scrimmage a lot. He's someone who's more of a CB2 than a CB1, right? You don't want Julius Brents to be the best corner on the field at any given time, but as that second guy, as a sort of wingman, you're feeling pretty good about him. Maybe he could play in the nickel. Maybe he could play safety. I don't know. I wouldn't do that with him. Just wanted to throw it out there because it's definitely possible. I think he fits best as your second outside corner. So I'm going to give this pick an A. Again, I like this pick a good bit. I think he's going to be a good fit with the Colts, and I think he's going to be a ton of fun. Moving on to the third round for the Indianapolis Colts, they selected wide receiver Josh Downs out of the University of North Carolina, which, fun fact, is my favorite college. Not a big college football fan. I like the sport. I don't have a team that I support a lot, but I'm a UNC fan for basketball, so they're kind of my default. But either way, that's not here nor there. Josh Downs was wide receiver 3 for me. Had a late first round, early second round grade on him. So getting him here in the third round, holy cow, this value is fantastic. He reminds me a good bit of the two guys ahead of him, actually, both Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers, maybe a bit more Zay Flowers. If you read my draft profiles that I did during the pre-draft process that I would post on Twitter, they were Substacks. I did fictional comps for all my drafted player, or for all the players I talked about just because a lot of people do the player-to-player comps, and that's fine, but it's overblown. I wanted to do something different. And Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, and Tank Dell, who we'll talk about when we get to the Texans, all had a comp that kind of grouped together. And it was the Pikachu evolution line from Pokemon. I'm sure people just, tuned out from that, but I don't care. I'm a nerd. I enjoy this shit. I don't care. So I had Zay Flowers as Raichu because he's the best one. He's the highest evolution, so to speak. He's the prime. Then you have Josh Downs, who was my favorite. Pikachu's the fan favorite, and he's kind of like the next step down. Definitely good on his own, but he could still take that step up and be the Zay Flowers. And then Tank Dell was Tank Dell. He was just kind of like a mini version of those two. But that being said, actually looking at Josh Downs as a player, super athlete. That's the first thing that stands out. Super athlete. Foot speed, acceleration, and his ability to change direction are all at a very high level. Much like Julius Brents, he has good stop-start ability. He's really good after the catch, has really reliable hands. He's a really good route runner. My favorite thing about him is, despite being a smaller receiver, he has a fantastic contested catch ability. 72% contested catch rate his final year at UNC, which is absurd. He has dynamic footwork. He is a phenomenal route runner in the red zone. Like, he reminds me a good bit of Hunter Renfrow from the Raiders in that way. He's just so creative and finds so many creative ways to get open down in the red zone. And he just overall has potential to be a really sick, deep threat. On the negative side of things, though, he's a smaller guy, and because of that, his arms aren't super long, which gives him a smaller catch radius. He's not great over the middle, again, because of his size. He's somebody that if he gets hit, he's going to go down pretty quickly. So it's really just he's small. That's what most of his weaknesses boil down to. He's small, and he's not the strongest guy in the world. Another thing, I completely forgot to bring this up. I don't know why. But another thing I really like about him is his release. Because he has this really cool thing he does when he has guys in off coverage, where he'll kind of delay his release, right? Like, he'll act like he's getting off the ball kind of slow, and then when they start to bite down, he just zips past them and ends up getting wide open downfield, and I think that's super sick. It was one of my favorite things to watch when watching receiver tape last year. So if it's not apparent, I love Josh Downs. It's probably maybe my favorite receiver in the class. There were a couple guys in there. Jonathan Mingo might have been my favorite. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But I really like him. Great value here. I'm going to give this an A+. Like I said, this is a steal. Great value, great player, and I think he is going to help out Anthony Richardson a ton. Moving on to the 4th round with their first of 2 picks, they selected offensive tackle Blake Freeland out of BYU. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be Blake Freeland's biggest fan, because I'm not. I think he's cool. I like the upside he brings to the table. If I'm being totally honest, he's somebody that reminds me a lot of Mike McGlinchey, for better or worse. Bigger tackle, good run blocker, good moving run blocker as well. Just not the best pass blocker, not really good with leverage, kind of a linear mover, kind of scheme dependent, those type of things. Like, he's a good developmental tackle, and I like the process here of taking a swing, because the Colts need to find their guy at left tackle, right? Say what you want about Bernard Ryman. If you think it's him, cool. I don't blame them for wanting to take another swing here. Again, like I said at the start of this, they really like their athletic players in general. Dude was really athletic. So, solid pick, good process, that type of thing. I'm going to give it a B+, because like I said, I don't love Freeland, but I can respect the move here. Complete flip side, though. Adetomiwa Adebawore in the 4th round. Holy fucking fuck. Excuse my language, but this pick is absurd. I loved Adebawore. He was one of my favorite players in the entire class. I was begging my Chicago Bears to draft this man. Begging them. And I wanted them to trade down in the 1st round and draft him in the 1st round. Then when it got to day 2, I was like, okay, I want to draft him in the 2nd round. Got to stayed on day 2, got to the 3rd round. Okay, I want him in the 3rd round. Then the 4th round, the Bears passed him. I was like, what the fuck are we doing? Then the Colts get him, and it broke my heart. I do not understand why the NFL was not as high on Adebawore as I was. This guy was, I graded him as an edge. He's like a tweener. He'll play DT, he'll play edge, that type of thing. But he graded as an edge for me. He graded out as edge 5 in a really deep edge class where I liked a lot of the guys. He was a late first round, early second round grade for me. And I just don't get why the NFL wasn't as high on him as I was. Like, I won't lie, I won't pretend to be ahead of the curve. I didn't pick up on him until after the combine when he blew everyone away with his absurd testing. But, like, he was good at Northwestern last year. Like I said, dude was an absurd athlete. It's like he was built in a lab. And you pair that with a high motor, great combo. His get-off, fantastic. His lateral agility is pretty damn good. He's got good length. I think he's got 34-inch arms, something like that. Has a lot of finesse. Obviously, when you're somebody that's fast and really quick off the line, you're going to generate speed to power pretty well. Pushes the pocket pretty well. He flashes a cross-chop move, which if you don't necessarily know what that is something that has made Aaron Donald very, very dominant. It's a move that is really good for smaller defensive linemen when they're going up against bigger linemen that allows them to utilize their quickness. And it is something that I'm not going to say is unguardable, but it's also not unguardable. You know, it's really, really fucking good. He's great on stunts, obviously, because of that quickness. His bull rush is pretty solid because of his ability to convert speed to power. His eyes are disciplined in the run. In fact, he's going to be a really good run defender day one. That's why I liked him so much, is because coming into the league, he's going to have to develop a little bit as a pass rusher, you know, mainly because of his technique. It's not all there yet, and his pass rush tool belt also isn't there yet, or all there yet, rather. He's got a little flash of something. But as a run defender, he's going to be awesome day one. But you know, looking at some of the negatives, like I said, he needs a little bit of polish as a pass rusher. Not the biggest dude in the world, not the bendiest dude in the world. Kind of lacks play strength because he's a little undersized. But overall, he's a guy that is going to play a Michael Bennett role, right? Gus Bradley's running the ship here on defense. And Michael Bennett was, you know, another tweener who would play defensive end and then kick inside on passing downs to 3-tech. And that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to do the same thing Michael Bennett did, just be a hell of a lot quicker. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. I'm going to give this an A+ again. It's 2 A+ for the Colts here. Really fucking good pick here. Love it. So mad he's not a Chicago Bear, man. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the league. And then we jump into the 5th round, the first of, 4 5th-round picks, goodness gracious. And the Colts selected cornerback Darius Rush out of South Carolina, who for me was CB14, but I had a 4th-round grade on him, so good value here. He's somebody that, despite not being as good as Julius Brents, and probably, you know, has a chance to not ever be as good as Julius Brents. I think his upside's a lot higher just because he has a way better athletic profile. He's a guy that played wide receiver, converted from wide receiver, excuse me. Played really well at the Senior Bowl, has good ball skills. That athleticism really jumps off the page at you. The unfortunate thing, though, is his tape was pretty hit or miss, you know, in terms of, like, technique. And just on a down-to-down basis with consistency, there was a lot that he can improve on. His reaction time isn't quite there, and his ability in zone coverage isn't quite there. But again, he's been playing corner for, you know, a shorter amount of time than a lot of these guys. So that's something that's just going to come over time, something that's going to come with reps and experience. So I like the pick a lot. I like him as a player a lot. I'm going to give this an A. I think he's a really exciting developmental corner. And, you know, given where the Colts CB room is right now, I think he'll get to, you know, kind of sit back and soak up those reps and eventually turn into something pretty nice for them. Their next 5th-round pick was safety Daniel Scott out of California, who I didn't like nearly as much. He was safety 20 for me, had a 7th-round grade on him, but he's somebody that's just a really, really good athlete. You know, he's really explosive. He's got quick feet, smooth hips. He's very instinctive, high-character guy, pretty productive in college. On the flip side of things, he lacks arm length. He's not a consistent tackler, which is the big thing for me, and I know I get shit for it all the time, but being able to tackle as a defensive player, unless you're a corner, is very, 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 very important to me, because that's like the main thing you're there to do, is, you know, stop the offense from scoring. And in a lot of situations, in order to do that, you have to tackle offensive players. Again, unless you're a corner that's completely locking somebody down, I want you to be able to tackle. I don't care that you're a free safety or a coverage safety or a deep safety. Still need to be able to tackle. On top of that, he lacks play strength. He struggles taking on blocks, and he's a little bit on the older side, but I can see why the Colts liked him. I can see the upside. I can see, the vision, so to speak, right? So I don't hate it. I don't love it as much as some of their other picks. I'm going to give it a B, but I definitely see the vision here. Their next pick was tight end Will Mallory out of Miami, who was tight end 14 for me, had a 6th round grade on him, so a little bit earlier than I would have taken him. But he's one of those guys that's just a straight-up pass catcher, right? Doesn't offer much as a blocker. He has really good speed, decent hands, he's good after the catch. It's just like I said, his blocking ability isn't there, not the strongest guy in the world, and that results in some issues with contested catches. He had a 38% contested catch rate in 2022, which is pretty rough for a tight end. I'm not going to lie to you. He's also a little bit on the older side. He's 24 years old. So this is just taking a flyer on athleticism. Granted, he's going to be tight end 2, maybe tight end 3. I really like Jelani Woods. I don't think Will Mallory is going to be challenging Jelani Woods for that tight end 1 spot. So it is what it is. Fine pick. I'm going to give it a B-. As we close out the 5th round here with their final 5th round pick being running back Evan Hall out of Northwestern. I like this pick a decent bit. He RB17 for me, had a late round 5, early round 6 grade on him, so pretty much where I would have taken him. And he's just your stereotypical scat back. Really good, like 3rd down, passing down guy. He's got a compact and muscular build, kind of like that low center of gravity. Good contact balance, good vision, runs really hard. And then in the passing game, he's got soft hands, good instincts, decent enough route runner, right? He can do what you need him to. He's not going to go out there and run routes like a receiver, like a guy, like Jahmyr Gibbs or Tyjae Spears or Bijan Robinson is going to do, but he can run it into the flat. He can run a Texas route. He can, run a whatever, right? Basic stuff you need a running back to do on 3rd down. Unfortunately, though, he has tight hips and isn't the twitchiest guy in the world, so he's more of a I'm going to catch it and then kind of like rumble and tumble. Not in a power back way, but like in a he's just not going to stop moving his legs type of way. And that's a good thing. Love guys like that. Love the little the muscle hamsters of the world, right? Shout out Doug Martin. But I like the pick. Good player. Good, right about where I would have taken him. So I'm going to give it an A-. Not quite an A, just because, not the best pick in the world. But I'm going to give it... Actually, you know what? Screw it. We'll give it an A. Change it on the fly. I like the pick. Talking myself into it, because the more I think about it, I don't have a reason to not give it an A. I don't know why I put it down as an A-, but I will give it an A. I like the pick. And then we get to the 6th round with edge rusher Titus Leo out of Wagner. Not gonna lie to you, didn't watch any Wagner film before the draft, if I'm being totally honest. But I did get around to watching him afterwards, and I came away with the idea that this is just a developmental edge rusher. He's a really good athlete. He's got an explosive pop in his hands, like, he's really going to fire out of his stance and hit you real quick. Good length, good at getting into the backfield and bringing down ball carriers. He was really productive in terms of TFLs. I forget the exact number, but it was in the 20s, I think, with his last 2 seasons combined. The only issue is that he's about to deal with a big step up in competition, obviously, going from Wagner to the NFL. And his hips are tight, hands aren't active. Even though they've got a good punch, it's not like he's sitting there moving them around and using them to his advantage. It's kind of he hits you and then he locks, and it's not ideal. And he just needs a lot of development technique-wise. It's a good dart throw at an athletic edge, but you're definitely going to need to do some work here. So I'm going to give this a B. Not the best pick in the world. There were definitely some edge rushers here that I would have taken over him, but I, again, see the vision. Fair enough. And then the 7th round, their second to last pick, took cornerback Jalen Jones out of Texas A&M, who was CB23 for me. Had a 6th round grade on him, a little bit lower than I've seen some people on him. And, maybe I would put him a little bit higher if I could go back and do it again, but it is what it is. It's really funny, though, because he's like the one guy in this class that doesn't fit the vibe, right? Like everyone else here, I guess him and Julius Brents. Everyone else here is like a crazy athlete, And then this guy is all technique, right? He's got good size, good length, so he's not undersized like a handful of these guys are. He's quick to trigger to the ball. He's pretty physical at the catch point. Has good ball skills, solid technique, really smart, high football IQ. He's pretty disciplined. Just like I said, not super fast. He's not good in run defense, but again, it's a corner. It is what it is there. And he lacks anticipation. He's somebody that, because of his physical profile, he could kick over to safety. Don't know if they'll do that, but they drafted 3 corners. Maybe. Crazier things have happened. But I do think it's a good pick. I like Jalen Jones quite a bit, so I'm going to give this an A. And then their final pick, Jake Witt out of Northern Michigan. Again, not going to lie to you, I didn't get to him before the draft, but after the draft, I did get a chance to sit down and watch a little bit of him. I mean, he's another developmental player, right? 7th round, that's cool. I like his story, though, because he was a basketball player that just wanted to play another sport, so he walked on as a tight end, and then halfway through his first year as a tight end, switched to tackle. So he has a year and a half, of tackle play under his belt, and in his first full year as a tackle in 2022, he was 2nd team all-conference, which is pretty damn impressive. But this guy checks every box athletically. He is nearly perfect as an athlete, as an offensive tackle. It's just like I said, he lacks experience, and his technique needs some work, obviously with that limited experience. But as a dart throw in the 7th round on an athletic lineman, I think this is great process. I like the pick a lot. Gonna give it an A- because, again, he's not the most polished guy in the world. And there's definitely a world where this completely flops, and it's the 7th round. It's not the end of the world, but, good pick. But as a whole, I love this Colts draft class. This is one of my favorite draft classes in the NFL. Josh Downs, Adebawore, 2 massive steals. I love Anthony Richardson. Julius Brents is great. Guys like Darius Rush and Evan Hall and Jalen Jones, big fan of them as well. So I'm going to give this a big fat A+. Love this draft. Love it to death. I think this is the type of draft that, changes the direction of a franchise. I don't know if you'll feel the impact right away, namely because I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to be great his first year. But as things start to grow, I do think the Colts are growing something really, really nice. Sucks because Jim Irsay exists, but, that's neither here nor there. I love the direction the Colts are headed in, especially after this draft. Moving over to the Houston Texans, this is a draft class where I'm going to piss some people off, mainly because of that 2nd pick. But let's go ahead and jump into things, starting out with quarterback CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. Good pick, really good pick. Texans needed a quarterback. Davis Mills isn't the guy. CJ Stroud was QB2 for me. Had a 1st-round grade on him, and he was arguably the most NFL-ready quarterback in this class. It was between him and Bryce Young. I would lean Bryce, but CJ Stroud isn't as short, so, he's got that going for him at least. But that being said, Stroud has solid arm talent. He's very accurate at all 3 levels, the short game, the intermediate game, the deep game. He's a solid athlete, good ball placement, possesses good ball placement. He's really smart with the football, doesn't turn it over a lot. He's got excellent touch from a clean pocket, but the issue with that is he's not really good under pressure. He really struggles under pressure. He's one of those guys that as soon as he feels pressure coming in, he's going to run away from it. Not ideal. Something you can develop, but not ideal. Because of that, he also lacks the ability to manipulate the pocket. He's not somebody that you're going to see step up when he feels pressure coming off the edge or anything like that. He's just going to straight up bail. He's not the most creative quarterback, and then when teams blitz against him, he's going to kind of panic. So, if you can get that figured out, which Stroud's a smart dude, I know testing says otherwise, but football-wise, Stroud's smart. So I have confidence. I think he'll be good. I think he'll be fine. I think they'll get it figured out. So I'm going to give this pick an A. I think this is your franchise quarterback in Houston. Reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott, if he was a little bit worse. Jared Goff, if he was a little bit better and could move a little better. That type of thing. So he'll at least be a top 15-ish quarterback at his peak. And you can win with that. Maybe not in the AFC, but we'll see. And then here, they trade up to the 3rd pick. Give up their 1st-rounder next year, which, horrible decision. Really bad decision. Because there's a chance that this team is also picking in the top 5 next year. And if that's the case, they're picking the top 5 next year. That's tough. Because I do not think Will Anderson Jr. is worth 2 top 10 picks. Now, that's a little bit of a hot take, but he's not. I don't think Will Anderson was a blue chip prospect. Thought he was really good. He was edge 2 for me. Top 10 player in the class, but I don't think he was a blue chip prospect. I don't think he was this perfect world beater that everyone wants to make him out to be. I saw, truth be told, he was the first defensive player I watched, and I went in thinking I was going to be watching Von Miller. And maybe that's a little bit on me, because that's what everyone had hyped him up to be, and I realized that was probably stupid in hindsight, but he was underwhelming. And even, looking on it in hindsight, okay, if I didn't think he was Von Miller when I was going, would I still be underwhelmed? Yes, I would. And we'll talk about why that is in a moment. But looking at the good side of things, high character, high football IQ, strong lower body, there's a lot of pop in his hands. He has an elite first step, converts speed to power really well, his hand placement's good, fills the gaps well, he's a solid run defender, but he lacks bend, plays really high at times, gave up a lot of ground in the run game last year. You could blame it on scheme, blame it on whatever, but the big thing for me is, especially in 2022, which me personally, when I'm evaluating players, I put the most stock into their most recent season. Now, there will be exceptions to this. If a guy's hurt, maybe less, probably less, right? If a guy's playing hurt, then probably less. If I know for a fact someone's dealing with something off the field that would change things, then less. But with Will Anderson, all signs point to 2022 him being the best defensive player in the country, and he just wasn't. The big reason for that is because in 2022, this man really struggled to finish plays. He would get in the backfield, which is great. He wouldn't bring down the running back. He would get in the backfield against the pass, which is great. Wouldn't bring down the quarterback. It was because he would take really bad angles to the ball. He wouldn't wrap up, and his technique as a tackler in the backfield was just all over the place. And I don't care how productive he was a year ago. If in his final season in college, his season where he's supposed to be at his apex, where he's supposed to be playing his best football to impress NFL scouts, he's struggling to take down ball carriers in the backfield as an edge rusher, I'm going to have an issue with it. Now, again, I'm not trying to make this out to be like Will Anderson sucks, or Will Anderson shouldn't have been a first-round pick or something, or Will Anderson was a bad first-round pick. Not at all. I see the upside with him. I think he's going to be good in the NFL. But he wasn't better than Tyree Wilson. He probably wasn't worth a top 5 pick. And he certainly wasn't giving up what could be a top 5 pick next year. The likelihood of it being a top 5 pick is higher than it not, in my opinion. So I'm conflicted, because I don't want to give Will Anderson a bunch of shit, because he's a good ball player. I don't want to make it sound like I think he sucks. But again, I'm pretty consistent with my whole my defenders need to tackle thing, especially if they're a linebacker, especially if they're an edge rusher. And Will Anderson in 2022 really struggled. So it's tough. Still going to give this an A. Still a good pick. I haven't taken trades into account when it comes to giving grades, and I'm not going to start it now. Maybe that's a dumb thing on my part. Maybe that's something I need to work on last year, but I'm grading the pick itself. I'm not grading how they got the pick. Or else this grade would probably be a little bit lower. But just grading off of drafting Will Anderson, it's good. It's good. I probably wouldn't have drafted him in the top 5, but I can't blame the Texans for doing it. However, what I can blame the Texans for doing is taking Juice Scruggs in the second round. Granted, it was towards the end of the second round, which makes it a little bit better. But Juice Scruggs for me, IOL 10, interior offensive lineman 10, round 3 grade. Didn't think he was worth taking this high. Now, he's got smooth get-off, blocks wide zone schemes pretty well. He keeps his head on a swivel. It's just his hands need to be a lot quicker. He's not a guy that's going to uproot a defender. He's somebody that's more going to wall off defensive linemen. And this isn't like a total waste. This isn't throwing away the pick. It's higher than I would have taken him. And there were probably better guys available. However, I don't want to penalize them for that too much because the number one guy that comes to mind is Luke Whippler, and everybody passed on Luke Whippler. So clearly there's something going on that I don't know. So I'm going to give this a C. C for the center, because he probably will start. And he'll be okay. He'll be good. I just think this was higher and there were more pressing matters for the Texans. Then we get to the third round. They took the hometown kid, wide receiver Nathaniel Tank Dell. Excuse me, I always called him Tank Nathaniel Dell. Imagine if your birth name was Tank and people called you Nathaniel. That would kind of suck. Tank's a badass nickname. But anyways, I like this pick. Kind of rich for my taste in terms of where they drafted him, but I can excuse it because he's fun. And he went to Houston, getting drafted by the Texans. Fun storylines make up for everything. But anyways, wide receiver 14 for me, had a late round 3, early round 4 grade on him. He's really athletic. He's a good route runner. Has a good release. He has the ability to beat press despite his size because of how quick he is off the ball. He can change direction really quickly. He's great after the catch, and he can make defenders miss. All that stuff is great. However, if corner gets his hands on him, he's kind of cooked because this dude is tiny. Like, he is tiny, tiny. And also because of his size, he's not a great contested catcher. His catch radius isn't great. It's harder for quarterbacks to get him the ball downfield because the margin for error is so much smaller. And he had he didn't have a great combine. I'm not going to say a bad combine, but he didn't have a great combine. So, I can see the downsides here, but I love Tank Dell. I think he's awesome. I think this is a great fit. I love the storyline. I'm going to give it a B+. A little bit earlier than I would have taken him, but I dig the vibe. As we move into the fourth round here, they selected edge rusher Dylan Horton out of TCU. About where I would have taken him. He was edge 17 for me, had a late round 3, early round 4 grade on him. Get him in the early 4th round. Good value here. He's got a high motor. He's slippery. He's got good lateral quickness for his size. He uses his length pretty well to compensate for his lack of height. He's a solid enough run defender with athletic upside. It's just he lacks strength and power relative to his frame. He's not the tallest dude, but he's wide. He's like 275, 280 pounds. He has a lack of true reps at edge because of the system he was playing in, have him playing inside a lot. His eyes are undisciplined against the run. His balance is inconsistent. He plays high. He has tight hips. But overall, is like your 3rd or 4th edge. I like it. I don't think he's ever going to be great. But, you know, I talk about this all the time. When it comes to edge rushers, you have Batmans, you have Robins, but you also have Alfreds. And Batman and Robin don't work without Alfred. You know? He might not be as physically gifted in some adaptations. In other adaptations, he takes a pill, punches Superman in the nose, and makes him bleed. Shout out Injustice, one of the most conflicting comic book storylines ever. But, you know, Batman and Robin don't work without Alfred, and Dylan Horton is an Alfred. I think he's a good rotational edge. So I'm going to give this a B. I'm going to give it a B. Not a lot to say there. We'll go ahead and move on to their next pick with linebacker Henry To'oTo'o out of Alabama, one of the best names in all of college football. For me, To'oTo'o was linebacker 9. Had a late round 4, early round 5 grade on him. So getting him here at the tail end of the 5th round is pretty good value. He's got high character, high football IQ. He's a leader, good run defender that diagnoses the run very well. He's very, very smart when it comes to playing the run. Moves pretty well laterally. It's just in coverage he's not great. He's not a great athlete. And he can struggle to shed blocks at times, but is like a run-defending Mike linebacker that is going to serve as like the quarterback of your defense and just, you know, read what's going on the offense, get everybody set. He's going to do that. He's also reuniting with his former teammate, Christian Harris, so like that. I'm going to give this a B+. Thought this was a pretty solid pick, and I like Henry To'oTo'o. We move on to the 6th round here, pick 24 with interior offensive lineman Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame. Not going to lie, didn't watch him before the draft. He's a solid backup lineman, played a handful of different positions on Notre Dame's offensive line. He's just somebody who's physically limited. So, you know, he's more of a technique, smart guy. Good backup. Gonna give this a B. Fine process here in the 6th round. And then their next pick in the 6th round, wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. He's somebody that a lot of my peers are really high on. And I was at first, But since the draft, I've kind of cooled down on him. So looking at where I had him before the draft, he was wide receiver 7 for me. If I were to do it again, he'd be a decent bit lower. Late round 2, early round 3 grades, so value-wise, pretty damn good. Even if I were to put him where I'd probably put him now, still be good value here. But he's got reliable hands. He's a solid route runner. He's really hard to press. He's good on 50-50 balls. He tracks the ball really well. He's hard to tackle. It's just he has issues separating downfield, which is a big thing for me. Not the twitchiest dude in the world, and his hands have lapses of inconsistency. There's going to be times where he is going to drop passes. But as someone who's going to be like the 4th, 5th receiver on the depth chart and really do the dirty work, he could do a lot worse. So I'm going to give this an A-, just because relative to where my grades were, really good value, just not someone I'm as high on. And then finally, the last pick here, safety Brandon Hill out of Pitt. He was safety 19 for me, had a late round 6, early round 7 grade on him. He's a super athlete, very rangy. He's physical. He's very instinctive. He's pretty tough, good closing burst, wraps up pretty well. He's just undersized. He missed a decent bit of tackles last year from taking bad angles and things like that. He wasn't the most productive player in the world either, but he has pretty solid upside, so as an athletic player on the back end that you can develop, I think this is a pretty solid pick. We're going to give it a B+. And as a whole, for the Texans here, again, because I'm not factoring in the trade in the first round, this is going to be higher than I've seen other people give it. In terms of grades, I'm going to give it a B+. If I were to factor in grades, trades, for these grades, it would be a decent bit lower, but I'm not, and I'm not going to start doing it now, so this is a B+ for me. Jumping on over to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I had a lot of praises to sing for the Colts. There's not going to be as many for the Jaguars, and I apologize for that, but day 2 was rough. So let's just go ahead and dive right in with Anton Harrison, their first pick, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, and I actually really like this pick. Anton Harrison was OT3 for me, had a pure first-round grade on him. He's somebody that, has the ideal size and length you want in an offensive tackle. Natural strength, natural power, natural leverage, His hands pack a punch. He's got elite hand and arm strength, so in his upper body, he's really going to do work. He mirrors pass rushers very well. He's a very physical run blocker. He's a really good anchor, and he can get to the second level and truly be an impactful player. My biggest issue with him is that he doesn't have like a real mean streak. You watch some of these linemen, and you can see like they take joy in hitting people, right? You watch an example in this division, prime Quentin Nelson. That dude was giggling when he was hitting people, right? You didn't see it, but you knew deep down it warmed his heart to just go up and pop a linebacker. And Anton Harrison, I don't mean any disrespect by this, just doesn't play like that's the case. Now that's fine. You can have offensive linemen that are, a bit more, I don't want to say conservative, but I also can't think of another word. You can have offensive linemen that are like that, but it's just something that I'm not a big fan of personally. He gives up a lot inside too. And on top of that, his balance is pretty inconsistent. He's hesitant against blitzes and stunts, and then against bigger linemen, he's just going to kind of slip off of them. But overall, I'm going to give this an A. I like Anton Harrison a good bit. Like I said, 3rd best offensive tackle in the class, and I'm excited to see what this is going to do to the overall dynamics on the offensive line, once everybody's back and ready to kick ass again. As we move into the second round, and please, for the love of God, can somebody in the comments explain to me why Brenton Strange was the pick here at 61? Please. Because I don't see it at all. I don't see the plan here. I don't see the vibe. I don't see anything. This was a bad pick, like point blank period. Like, for me, Brenton Strange graded out as the 9th best tight end, which put him in the late 4th, early 5th round. He's a decent run blocker, solid play strength. He's a pretty good lead blocker. He's a solid pass blocker, solid hand usage. So he's somebody that, could make a good H-back. You don't take an H-back in the second round. As the fullback guy, and by extension, an H-back enjoyer, You don't take an H-back in the second round. In the passing game, can't run routes. Pretty bad after the catch. He's just somebody that's like screams tight end 2, tight end 3. Like low end tight end 2, high end tight end 3. There were a lot of better tight ends available. I'll flash their names up on the screen here. Or a couple of them rather, however many. It's just a bad pick. I don't like it at all. I don't want to quite fail him because like I can't fail an H-back. I can't do it morally. But this is a D-, man. This is not a good pick. I don't get it. I don't see the vision. I don't see anything. And then we get to the third round, and I don't hate this pick as much, but this is still not a good pick. Tank Bigsby, RB15 for me, had a 5th round grade on him, so a lot higher than I would have taken him. And he's fun. You know, he's explosive, he's fast, he's got good burst, he's agile, has quick feet, changes directions well. There's flashes there as a pass catcher, he has good vision. But he doesn't really fit in this RB room. Like, Travis Etienne is very clearly the guy. And you don't have anybody who complements him well. Like, you need a power back, the thunder to his lightning. And there were guys on the board that not only I thought were better than Tank Bigsby, but fit that better. Like, Roschon Johnson would have been perfect here. Am I complaining that they didn't take him? No, I love him. I'm very glad we had him in Chicago, but he was RB5 for me. He was sitting here, and he would have been that perfect complement. Because Tank Bigsby, right? Skinny lower half, lacks discipline, lacks contact balance, he runs upright, has no power profile whatsoever, so he's just not a good complement to Travis Etienne. On top of that, he has fumbling issues. Can't hold on to the ball. So, like, I don't like the pick that much. I don't hate it as much as the Brenton Strange pick. I'm going to give it a D, but I don't like it. And then another pick that, you know, at least I like the player here, and I think this was a good place to take him, is linebacker Ventrell Miller, but I don't like the pick because the Jaguars have like 37 linebackers on the roster, and you're taking another guy who, you know, it's not like he's some athletic freak with crazy upside. You're taking one of the high floor guys. Like, this is a really weak linebacker class, but there were a couple of guys who I liked, like Ventrell Miller or Servakia Dennis was kind of the best example of this, where they weren't super athletically, right? But they were really smart, and they were good leaders, and they brought a lot of energy to the locker room, and that's what Ventrell Miller is, right? I just don't get why the Jaguars would want this guy. You know, I don't get why they need him when you got Foyesade Oluokun, you've got Chad Muma, you've got Devin Lloyd. Like, I get linebacker depth, but in the 4th round, you could be going at positions of need still. You could be taking, you know, swings on high upside guys. I just don't get taking somebody who has a high floor like Ventrell Miller in this position. Looking at Miller, though, as a player, right? Outside of that high floor, he's a high IQ guy, lots of experience. It's a really fiery mentality that allows him to be a vocal leader on the field. He's a good blitzer, sheds blocks pretty well. He's good in zone coverage. He's an aggressive run defender that diagnoses the run pretty well. He has gap discipline. It's just like I said, he's not super athletic. He's inconsistent as a tackler, but he's good enough. And he struggles covering tight ends when they're going in motion. So, I don't know. I like Miller. I think he's a good player, and I think this is a good place to take him. So I'm going to give this a B-. Like, this isn't the worst pick in the world. It's just, I wish they would have went a different direction. I feel like there were other directions they could have went that would have been better for them and what they need, and not just adding the 38th linebacker to their team. Then their other 4th round pick is another pick that I do not like, and that is edge rusher Tyler Lacey out of Oklahoma State. He's a guy that I didn't watch before the draft, but if I did, I would have placed him more in the 6th, maybe 7th round, so taking him in the 4th round is pretty high for me. He's just your typical tweener. Like, he's a good run defender off the edge, but if you kick him inside, he's probably going to get ate up. He doesn't bring a lot as a pass rusher, especially in terms of, like, his tool belt and his overall technique. He's just a developmental guy and a real swing at a defensive lineman, but not a good one. You know, like, this was a deep edge class. We're in the 4th round. There were plenty of guys they could have taken here that I think would have been better. And again, the Jaguars front office knows better than I do. Maybe they see something I don't, right? And if they do, great. Same thing goes with Ventrell Miller and Brenton Strange and Tank Bigsby, right? If they see something I don't, fantastic. But for me personally, I don't like this pick either. I'm going to give it a D. This all goes back to I'm not an NFL GM. Maybe I'm missing something here. But I don't see it. I don't see it. And then the 5th round, they took linebacker Yasir Abdullah out of Louisville. Shout out my boy Valente. This is one of his favorite players. But Abdullah was edge 23 for me. Had a late round 4, early round 5 grade on him, so about where I would have taken him. This is first pick in the 5th round, actually, so right around where I would have taken him. And he's one of those hybrid off-ball linebacker edge type guys, almost a situational pass rusher, with a high motor, quick first step, loose hips, good closing speed, good short area quickness, good lateral agility, understands leverage pretty well. He just lacks strength at the point of attack. He's a little undersized. He's not a great run defender, and if he tries to go inside, he's going to get lost because of his size. But we're in a part of the NFL now, or we're in an era of the NFL now, where a lot of teams are employing type guys like this that are, like I said, situational pass rushers, where they're a little bit smaller, but they're a lot quicker. And you kind of bring them in after you've had somebody wear down an offensive tackle, and they're just going to blow right by them on a random 3rd down and get a big crucial sack for you. Like James Houston for the Lions or Josh Uche from the Patriots are good examples of this. And I think Yasir Abdullah can be exactly that for the Jaguars. So I like this pick a good bit. I'm going to give it an A-. Just because, I don't love edge rushers and linebackers that can't defend the run. But this is a good place to take him. I like the vision with him. I think he can serve a really, really solid spot and role on the Jaguars defense. And then here, back-to-back picks. They did really well here. I really like what they did here. Starting out with Antonio Johnson, the safety from Texas A&M. He was safety 4 for me. I had a late 2nd, early 3rd round grade on him. You take him in the 5th round, that's fantastic value. I'm sure you know where this is headed. He has good long speed, really good pursuit speed. He's got good height, good length, takes really long strides to get to the ball. He takes good angles to the ball, which is great. You love to see that. He anticipates well. He's a sharp processor. He really picks up on what's going on pretty quickly. Pretty good tackler as well. Not great, but pretty damn good. And he can shed blocks thanks to his length. So he's not somebody that's going to get swallowed up if you try to, get him involved in run defense. However, he is stiff. His short area quickness isn't quite all there. He's not super productive. And he has limited tape as a safety, but that's because he was really versatile in college. Played safety, played a lot of nickel, played a lot of linebacker. So he's somebody that can do a lot of different things for you. Probably play him up in the box, which is ironic given the amount of linebackers they have. But I like the Antonio Johnson pick a lot. I'm excited to see what he's going to do for them. I'm going to give this an A+ just because this is a steal. Great value, really good player. I like this fit a lot. And then Parker Washington, spoiler alert, is also an A+. He was another player who's one of my favorite receivers in this class. He was wide receiver 9 for me, had a late 2nd, early 3rd round grade, just like Antonio Johnson. He has a really high floor, and the reason I like him so much is because he's like a running back. Like, he's tough after the catch, he runs like a running back. He's got a thick build, strong lower body, really good contact balance, he's not afraid of contact. And on top of that, he's a good route runner, has reliable hands, he's a good contested catcher, he's able to bring in difficult catches, whether he's got people all over him or it's at a weird angle or, whatever it might be. He accelerates really well and he's slippery. He's kind of like a poor man's Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? That's kind of the vibe you get from him, if not a little bit thicker and a little bit better as like a runner with the football. At least like runner as in like a pure runner, like a running back runner, right? However, this does come at the cost of him not being super explosive. He doesn't have the highest upside in the world. He struggles against press, but he's a slot receiver. So it is what it is. And he doesn't really have a second gear. So he's not somebody that's going to torch somebody downfield. But you get him the ball in the short game and let him cook after the catch, you're gonna get good results. So like I said, this is an A+ for me. And then these next 2 picks, I'm going to kind of group together with Christian Braswell and Eric Hallett II. 2 guys that, I didn't watch before the draft. Surprise, surprise there. I'm kidding. I watched a lot of players before the draft, just not these two. These are just, dart throws at a nickel corner, right? They're both good athletes. They need to develop in terms of their technique. Looking at Braswell specifically, he plays a short pass game pretty well. He's a solid tackler, but he lacks length and his balance isn't all there. And then Hallett, he has good experience on special teams, which is probably where he's going to play. He's good anticipation. He just doesn't have the size or the length, and he's not good in run support because he takes really bad angles. So these two, like I said, I'm kind of grouping them together, kind of flying through them, because I don't think there's a lot to say about either one. Braswell, I don't like as much as Hallett. It's very slim margin. But I'm going to give Braswell a B-, and I'm going to give Hallett a B. And then we move on to Cooper Hodges from App State. Again, didn't watch him before the draft. Can't say App State's offensive line was necessarily on my radar before the draft, and if you think that's insane, I apologize. But he's just a high-character team captain type of guy. He's really scrappy. He's a willing run blocker, but his footwork is inconsistent, and he has issues keeping up on the edge. So bringing him in as a backup, taking a swing on a high-character guy that's going to work his ass off, I like it. Give it a B. Not the best, or not the craziest pick in the world, but it's pretty solid. And then, very next pick, actually, pick 227, Raymond Vahasek. I believe that's how you say that. I suck at pronouncing names. I'm a UNC fan, I should probably know. The defensive tackle out of North Carolina. I didn't watch him before the draft, but I did catch him a little bit watching a little bit of UNC last year, and I can't say I was blown away by him, but I also wasn't upset with him. He's just a stereotypical nose tackle, high character, tough guy, really strong upper body, good power rusher. It's just his durability isn't great. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but again, he's a nose tackle. Who cares? And his plan as a pass rusher is lacking, right? He goes out there and he's just kind of like, okay, I'm going to run through you. Then if that doesn't work, it's like, okay, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared, Mom. Come pick me up. And that's not great. So I think as a developmental nose tackle, it's fine. I'm going to give it a B-. And finally, the most conflicting pick in the 2023 NFL draft for me, the only fullback selected, was Derek Parrish out of Houston. But I have a real big problem with this, okay? I have a real big problem with this. The Jacksonville Jaguars wanted to bring in a fullback. That's great. I love it. Please, everyone have a fullback. I'm all for it. And I get why they like Derek Parrish, because he's a converted edge rusher, so he's going to be good as a tackler, he's going to be good on special teams, things like that. And there's been a lot of success of linebackers and defensive ends converting to fullback in the NFL. You look at guys like Keith Smith, he was a linebacker. Last year, Troy Hairston, the rookie, he was a defensive end, he played really well. Jason Kabenda, Penn State, top 10 all-time in tackles there. There's a lot of examples of linebackers and defensive ends switching over to fullback and having success in the NFL, which is cool. Again, I'm all for it. But if you looked at my draft board, you would know that I unironically thought there was a blue chip, perfect fullback prospect in this class. Not just a blue chip, but like I said, the perfect fullback. And that was Hunter Lipke out of North Dakota State. And he went undrafted, which breaks my heart. But here we have Derek Parrish, who played one snap at fullback in college. And he gets picked. Like, I get it. The special teams upside is there, but oh my god, Hunter Lipke does everything better that the fullback position asks of you. He's a better blocker, he's stronger, better pass catcher, faster, better runner of the football. Like, he's like, very Kyle Juszczyk-esque. But he also has a power profile that would allow him to play like a Jason Kabenda or a Jakob Johnson or a Keith Smith or someone like that. They took Derek Parrish over him, so I'm so conflicted. Because I love that a fullback got drafted, but it's the wrong one. So I'm going to give it a B. I want to give Parrish higher. But him going over Lipke just doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't get it. So as a whole, I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't love this draft class. I'm sorry, Jaguars fans. You're still the best team in this division. You have the best quarterback in this division for now, by far. That's just saying Anthony Richardson might surpass Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying he will, but there's a chance. You have the brightest future. You have the most upside, but you had the worst draft. So I'm going to give it a C+. Just didn't move me. There were a couple good picks there, like Antonio Johnson and Parker Washington, Anton Harrison. There were a lot of reaches and some heartbreak even, at least on my end. Because Derek Parrish getting drafted over Hunter Lipke is going to keep me up at night for the next 7 years at least. But yeah, just not a draft I'm really a fan of. And finally, the Tennessee Titans had a smaller draft class relative to the rest of their division, especially only 6 picks. But I thought they did really well on at least 5 of them. So let's go ahead and dive into it, starting out with Peter Skoronski, who here is listed as a tackle. For me, I graded him as a guard, so interior offensive lineman, and he was the best one in the class. If I had graded him as a tackle, he would have been OT1, because he was a top 10 player in the class for me. You get him at pick 11, that's pretty solid value. He's a high football IQ guy, good leader, firm anchor, exceptional athlete. Definitely the most NFL-ready offensive lineman in the class. It was between him and John Michael Schmitz. In pass protection, his hand technique is really crisp, really effective. He has a dynamic base as a blocker. The only issues with him is obviously his length. Lacks the length to really be an effective tackle, and I'm pretty sure the Titans have him playing guard. I could be wrong there. But I wouldn't be upset if they tried him at tackle first, waited for him to not work out there, if he wasn't going to work out. If he does work out, great, you got a great tackle. If he doesn't work out, kick him into guard. You'll have a great guard. And he's also not the strongest guy in the world, but if he's playing guard, I think he'll be able to get away with it. So I'm going to give this an A. I thought this was a really good pick. Not a lot to say. I think everybody kind of knows what Peter Skoronski brings to the table, and I think everybody has a similar opinion on Skoronski because he's a pretty safe prospect. But one player that is very up and down with a lot of people is Will Levis, who surprisingly fell to the second round here. I did not think that would happen. I actually had a first-round grade on him. He was QB4 for me, which means that he would have been ranked lower than the other 2 quarterbacks that got drafted in this division, obviously, with CJ Stroud being QB2, Anthony Richardson being QB3, and then obviously Bryce Young being QB1. But the best way to describe Will Levis, and this is going to be really ironic considering what I said about Will Anderson, 2022 tape bad, 2021 tape good. And the reason I put more stock into it with Anderson than Levis is because Levis was playing in a completely new offense in 2022, lost all of his weapons, and was being asked to do a lot of things that he wasn't, being asked to do in 2021 that completely shifted things, and it made it a lot more difficult. So Levis kind of gets excuses here. Will Anderson doesn't because nothing changed for him. He was still playing under Nick Saban. But with Levis, he has a high ceiling, good size, solid athlete, strong arm, passes have some good zip to him, and he gets the ball out pretty quickly, which is nice. He's accurate most of the time. He will have some examples of lapses and inconsistent throws. His footwork's good. It's just his decision-making is pretty inconsistent. He has a slow processor. His pocket presence isn't great. He has issues sensing pressure. He hesitates on some throws. He's not the most creative guy in the world. Titans fans, you might love this. Truth be told, Levis reminds me a lot of a young Ryan Tannehill. For better or worse, but better. Like a better young Ryan Tannehill. So this is a good pick. I think Levis can be good if you can develop him. I think learning from Tannehill will be really big for him because if there's one thing Tannehill doesn't do, it's make erratic decisions. And that will help Levis a lot. So I'm going to give this an A based off the value and based off of me liking Will Levis. Speaking of liking players, we get to running back Tyjae Spears here in the 3rd round, who might have been my favorite player in the class. It was between him, Hunter Lipke, Tyree Wilson, and Roschon Johnson. Right, it was those 4. I love Tyjae Spears. And respectfully, Titans fans, I am so sad he is on your team. Not only because I want him to be a Bear, but also because I feel like he's being wasted here. Because obviously you've got the King, you've got King Henry, making Tyjae Spears your RB2, and I think that's kind of a waste of his talents. That being said, the NFL letting him fall to the 3rd round, criminal. I had a 2nd round grade on him, he was RB3. If I could go back, I'd make him RB2 over Jahmyr Gibbs because I think Tyjae Spears can do everything Gibbs can do. And I think he's a little more dynamic. But looking at Spears as a player, good speed, really explosive. His feet are agile and always moving. He can cut on a dime. He's really twitchy, really shifty. He has great balance, great vision. He's very physical at the point of attack despite being a smaller running back. He has a compact build with a low center of gravity. He's consistently falling forward. His route running rivals most wide receivers in this class, and he has natural hands. On the downside, he has a small frame. It's not exactly a workhorse, and his knees are bad. He tore his ACL in 2020. I think he's torn both ACLs to the point where, like, they're not there anymore, which is kind of scary. But like I said, I'm sad he went to the Titans, not because I have some vendetta against the Titans. I swear to you, I have nothing against the Titans. I just wish he was somewhere where he was going to get used more. And who knows, maybe if Derrick Henry hits that running back slump that all running backs eventually have to hit, he can take over next year's RB1. But either way, this is an A+. I love Spears. Great value, great player. Just wish he went somewhere else, respectfully. Then we get into the 5th round here. They selected tight end Josh Whyle out of Cincinnati. And I didn't watch him before the draft, but when I went back, I didn't like him. I wasn't moved. He has a big frame. He's fast for his size. He eye points the football pretty well. He knows how to find the safe spot in the zone, and he's a willing blocker, not afraid to get down and dirty, that type of thing. And he uses his length and athleticism when on the move as a blocker pretty well. But he's not a good contested catcher. In fact, he's pretty bad at it. He's a poor route runner. He lacks power as a blocker. He lacks leverage as a blocker when, holding his ground. When he's on the move, good. When he's sitting in place, bad. And honestly, there were just better tight ends available. You could have gotten Davis Allen, who was a really good 50-50 guy, or if you wanted to take a flyer on an athletic, tall tight end, Zach Kuntz was there. And I will yell at every person who took a tight end past, the 3rd round, and it wasn't Zach Kuntz, because Zach Kuntz was freaking awesome. So the pick's not terrible, but it's also not great. I'm going to give it a C+. I just think there are way better guys available. And I don't love what Whyle brings to the table. And then we get to the 6th round, and the Titans selected offensive tackle Jalen Duncan out of Maryland. It was OT 12 for me. Had a 5th round grade on him. He's somebody with a wide frame, good length, good get off. He's a mauler in the run game, has that mean streak you want to see. Heavy hands, solid leverage. He's just not somebody that's too good in pass pro. He really struggles moving backwards. His footwork is choppy, and then his balance in the passing game is bad. But as a run blocker is pretty good. So somebody who's like a developmental guard almost as a run blocker, I like it. Gonna give it an A. Thought this was good value. And then finally, Colton Dowell from UT Martin, the wide receiver. I didn't get to watch him before the draft, and truthfully, I didn't get to watch a lot of him after the draft. He was someone that I just couldn't get tape on, but from what I've seen, he's fast, he's big, he's got good footwork, he's a good contested catcher, tested pretty well, hometown kid. I like the vibes, I like the story. I'm going to give it an A based off process. You're taking a flyer on a really big and athletic receiver in the 7th round that has connections to the team and the city. Sick. Why not? Overall, love what the Titans did here. I am going to give them an A-, mainly because of the Whyle pick. That's kind of the big hang up here, but I think they did pretty damn well. But anyways, that's going to do it for not only this video, but my 2023 NFL Draft Grade series here on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed. This now means all 8 parts are out, so if you want to go check them out, there should be a link in the description down below to a playlist with all of those videos in it. I have officially graded every single pick, going division by division, team by team, and pick by pick. I have handed out my grades for the 2023 NFL Draft. I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you think, whether or not you agree with my grades, disagree, think I was too harsh on a guy, not hard enough, anything like that. Let me know. I'm starting to lose my voice. I've been doing a lot of talking on camera over the past month, and it is killing me, but we're going to continue pumping this content out and whatnot, so definitely be on the lookout for more of the team preview series, which will continue to come out. Currently in the middle of that. By the time this is uploaded, the AFC South should be soon to follow. The night I'm recording this, I'm actually recording the Jaguars episode the next day, so that'll probably be the next video after this one. I could be wrong. Things happen, but we shall see. Either way, to everyone out there watching, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.